FMR 101.3.
Welcome to Cultural Roundup. We've changed our title from Gallery Roundup to Culture Roundup now because it's more appropriate. I'm Lucinda Jolly, art reviewer and the head of journalism at City Varsity. And this afternoon I'll be talking to Stephen Symons. Stephen is a graphic designer by profession and he's currently exhibiting at the Zico Castle. His self-funded exhibition is called Nutria, Imprints of Conscription into the SADF, and is curated by Mark Erasmus. The exhibition's subject matter is compulsory military conscription in the South African Defence Force for all able-bodied white men from 1967 to 1993. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you.
So my first question is to Stephen, if you could sketch for us the layout and the components of the exhibition so that the viewers can have a sense of what it's about.
Sure, Lucinda. The venue is Alleman's Barracks, formerly housing soldiers that were stationed at the castle from as early as the First World War. The room itself is extremely long. It measures almost 50 meters in length and is about 4 meters wide. The Nutria exhibition includes a series of about 32 framed works comprising of photographs that I took as a conscript and a number of illustrations. Additionally, there are large oversized A0 copies of SADF documents related to conscription, including call-up papers and deferment papers. Then there are a number of installations or sculptures, which include actual objects such as uniforms, webbing, and weapons related to conscription in the SADF. And then, of course, there's the unique and somewhat unsettling smell of the place, perhaps hinting back to decades of use by soldiers that were billeted there.
Great. So that gives you a kind of a sense, this long room, but dank smelling, with these objects moving in a particular framework. Now, the title of this exhibition is Nutria, and I must say that I didn't know what that meant. So I looked it up, and it says it's a kind of a rodent whose skins are used. So why this title, Stephen?
Actually, it's not a rodent. Nutria was the term used to refer to the rich brown color of the army uniforms of the SADF era. For example, the South African Marine Corps were referred to as the Brown Navy because of the color of their Nutria brown uniforms. So, unfortunately, it doesn't refer to a rodent.
Okay. Although the skin of the rodent is brown like the uniform, so maybe there's a vague kind of connection. So moving on to that, you were part of the compulsory conscription, and if you were to put your experiences in the Defence Force in a nutshell, like in a sentence or a phrase, how would you define it?
Sure. I was conscripted at the close of the 1980s into the South African Navy and completed so-called national service at the end of 1990. Interestingly, it was a period that pointed towards the end of an era of militarization that had spanned almost 2 decades. At the time, the SADF was undergoing massive changes and was under huge pressure, both internally and externally. Internally, I guess, national service was shortened initially to 18 months and then a year. Externally, the political landscape was transforming with the unbanning of the ANC, followed by the release of Nelson Mandela. I guess it was, so to say, the dusk of the SADF as a military powerhouse within Southern Africa. Of course, the border war had ended, so the SADF's primary role had changed and shifted to manage unprecedented eternal unrest, particularly within the townships. So in a nutshell, it was a time of great flux and uncertainty for me, at least, as a conscript.
Now, this exhibition, why now? So much time has passed, people have almost buried it, forgotten it, and you're resurrecting it. To what purpose?
I think that's an extremely interesting question. Attempting to understand and grapple with the silences of ex-SADF conscripts is a complex space. Guilt, trauma, and post-conflict silences are common factors that delay the exploration and public voicing of experiences of all soldiers, irrespective of the theatre of conflict. In the case of South Africa, the massive political changes, the shift from the apartheid era to the so-called democratic era, most likely contributed to these silences. Naturally, there are always exceptions to the rule, But by, I think, the mid-2000s, there was a surge in publications related to the experiences and anecdotes of SADF conscripts, with books such as J.M. Thompson's An Unpopular War, which in a sense opened the floodgates. Also think that the post-apartheid era and ironically current political instabilities allow for a more comfortable, or dare I say, even socially acceptable space to give voice to these uncomfortable narratives. Personally, it took me almost 3 decades and the prompting of one of my PhD supervisors to encourage research related to how ex-conscripts, myself included, navigate the ambiguities of their sense of masculinity, memories, and even whiteness in a very contested space.
Well, that's quite an understanding of that and quite an in-depth approach to that response. What are you hoping that your viewer will gain in seeing this exhibition?
I think, well, we need to go back and look at the number of conscripts that were conscripted, the number of white males that were conscripted. Approximately 660,000 white males were conscripted between 1967 and 1993, and many of them never speak of it, particularly of their militarized boyhoods leading up to their induction into the SADF. It's become part of a traumatic history that most tend to avoid and have packed away with their kit bags or balsucker in their attics. Most conversations relating to conscript experiences don't move further than the braai place or the dinner table or the relative anonymity of social media. My exhibition addresses the question, how does one live those memories and move on? I would say Nutria is a creative reply to those silences and hopes to achieve conversation through creativity.
Great. And your responses to this exhibition, I mean, I went and saw it myself, and my friend who I went with said she found it chilling.
I think that's a good word to use, chilling. I noted a couple of interesting comments around the exhibition just after the opening. Most were positive, and there were words of encouragement from a diverse range of South Africans across all races, and interestingly, some who had no idea that conscription even existed, particularly younger generations. The exhibition was opened by Professor Gobodo Madikizela, who opened up the special hearing for conscription at the TRC, and she posed the question, if these experiences are not articulated or spoken about, where do they go? I've spoken to and interviewed high-ranking SADF officers, NCOs, resistors, conscripts, and mothers and sisters of ex-conscripts, and they've approached me and described their feelings and support for my research in the exhibition. Naturally, of course, there are those who prefer that this type of conversation doesn't take place, and that's something I also respect. But so many histories have been revised and blurred by current and past dominant political discourses, and I think we are doomed to a painful repetition of those memories if we don't give voice to them, creatively or otherwise.
And that's where we end. Thank you very much, Stephen. Stephen Symons was my guest. He's a graphic artist, and he's also holding an exhibition called Nutria, Imprints of Conscription into the SADF, and it's curated by Mark Erasmus, and it's on at the Ezekiel Castle until the 15th of June.